From the iHeartRadio studios in New York City, come two diehard fans of the greatest rock and roll band hailing from Hollywood, California. Dissecting all things Guns N' Roses and anything else in their distorted minds, it's Brando and Scotto.
'Cause you know what the fuck you are!
And this is Appetite for Distortion.
Try it again!
I'm going to dedicate this to Mr. Malcolm Young. Who will be sorely missed by none more than his brother Angus.
And welcome to the podcast, Appetite for Distortion. My name is Brando, episode 35. Yes, rest in peace, Malcolm Young. Long battle with dementia. Just awful. So I like to think he's at peace now. Guns N' Roses last night in Las Vegas. Of course, this is a podcast. I say last night because I try to be as much in real time as possible. It is November 19th. 1 o'clock, Scotto, Ian could not be here today because, I don't know, it's too early for him. I said, hey, do you want to come on with RussTCB second time? And he's like, I don't like him. He didn't say that. I'm totally making that up. So RussTCB from MyGNRForum joins us for the second time. So, and the first time I did not have the sound clip, Russ. So you are officially, you're a bad apple. And joining him, we'll see if Downzy will be a bad apple, the administrator for MyGNRForum. So you guys going to be my co-hosts, guests today. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, right on, man.
Not a problem. And since I'm getting you on right away, you have to bear with my stupid little segment at the beginning of the show where we get to all the itinerary. Shotgun News. News! I did not take my medication today. So I want to say first thank you to Ryan Roxy, of course, from Slash's Snake Pit, current guitarist from Alice Cooper. He was on our last episode. Awesome guy. Can't wait to have him back. Check that out, that episode, if you haven't already. Some tidbits about Slash's Snake Pit never heard before. Like Gilby Clarke was going to be one of the original guitarists, but never happened. I don't think he's like, I never said that before. And he said it to us. It's kind of great. So I appreciate all the feedback from all of you. Also, I got to say happy 57th birthday to Matt Sorum, who apparently is the oldest guy in Guns N' Roses or in that family. Do you guys know that offhand? He's 57?
Well, what's funny is as that was coming out of your mouth, I was like, really? 57? So, no, I didn't know that. And, yeah, that does sound accurate. He'd be the oldest. And
he looks good, man. Like, he's like a jacked dude.
Yeah, he looks all right.
Yeah, he doesn't look as good as Sammy Hagar, but he looks good. And so, again, I also want to mention last night in Vegas, of course, that Malcolm Young dedication. But also, maybe we could start here, fellas, if you want, or just a quick little opinion on it. DJ Ashba was there, and he was taking pictures with Duff Slash and saying it's great to see the boys back together again. Because there were rumors of Sorum and DJ being in Vegas, so they were like, oh, okay, are they going to show up? But DJ just, hung out. So welcome officially to Appetite for Distortion, Downzy and Russ.
I can't think of a better subject to start on than
the DJ Aspa.
Yeah, Russ, you can take that one about DJ. Go ahead.
No, we could save that. We could save that for later if you want.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy, and I say that not sarcastically. He's an extremely nice guy. Thus concludes any thought that I could share on DJ that is even remotely positive.
Yeah, I did meet him once. Some on the forum are somewhat familiar with my abbreviated account of the night I met Axl and partied with the band. This was about 7 years ago. And I did get to meet DJ. And you can say what you want about his stage antics or his, he's very good at self-promotion and all that stuff and
his water
salesmanship and all that stuff. But he is, when you do meet him, he is a very nice guy, and you can't take that away from him. And he's a very humble guy. I actually gave him a compliment. I did like the solo that he was, when he first was brought out, he did this solo. I actually can't remember the name of it. The Ballad of Death Metal, I believe it was. And I said, you and Axel need to polish that up into a full-fledged song. And he gave me a high five, and he's like, oh, thanks, man, that's amazing. He goes, can you do me a favor? I said, what's that? He says, well, Axel's right over there. Can you go tell him that, but don't tell him I said that? And I was like, yeah, that's not doing that. So,
but yeah, I said what I said with no sarcasm whatsoever. He's a super nice dude.
He comes off as a nice guy. Actually, I was initially excited when he had joined the band because I was a fan and still am. Mainly of the first record of 6 a.m. And I was like, oh, I like that first 6 a.m. record. Let me see what this guy brings. And I just thought it was weird when he started wearing that Nightmare Before Christmas version of Slash's top hat. I don't know. That's just like, I thought that was weird. I'm like, you can't help. Richard Fortus can't help the fact that he kind of looks like. What's that?
Yeah. I say it'll quickly devolve into a bashing session if I even start.
He always struck me.
I agree with you there.
Okay.
He always struck me as someone that never really knew how to fit in to the band. How to sort of behave on stage, how to, he had his anti-bullying campaign, which is really great. But then he would brag about him and Axel beating up some guy. And I was like, well, or smashing pots in the hallways. I'm like, well, that's nice for the maid. Like, it's like it was kind of a contradictory story he seemed to put out. Or persona that was, it put a bad taste in a lot of fans' mouths, and mine included. So, I'm glad he went, glad he had a good time, but I'm glad he was in the audience and not on the stage.
Fair enough. See, I wanted to get your guys' opinions on that because I wasn't sure. I'm like, it's cool that he's there, but it would have bothered me if he was on stage before the likes of Izzy or, honestly, even Buckethead.
Yeah.
Especially with his health issues. Fucking get him back up there before he dies. We don't have to spend any more time on DJ.
If we did a poll, we do polls all the time on the forum. Like, what do you rank this, do this, and if we did a poll on like which member would you like to see come back, and we did GNR's got a lot of people in there. I'd put some serious money down that DJ would probably be low on that list.
I think Bucket would be way higher than a lot of people would guess, though.
Honestly, I think so too.
Definitely. I think if even Gary Sunshine or the less known players would probably rank higher than DJ. I mean, he just wasn't a good fit for the fans, and it's unfortunate because I think he means well, and but we're on to greener pastures, and so let's. It's
a very good way to encapsulate DJ. He means well.
Yeah.
Don't we all? So speaking of meaning well, though, Downzy, you're of the land of meaning well. You're calling from Canada, right?
That's right.
The politeness
a lot
country.
Of people know I'm from Canada, and so the forum, just to give you a little history, it was owned and started by a guy named Eric who lives in Montreal, and he was the original owner of MyGNRForum.
Okay.
And one thing I listened to Russ's the great episode that you had Russ on yesterday, and one thing that's kind of funny about MyGNR and MyGNRForum is, so I own MyGNRForum. I don't own MyGNR.com. Eric still owns that, and the funny thing about that is that we've had complaints, particularly from former members like Chris Pittman, who think we're the same thing, and so he's gone off on us because some information on MyGNR is wrong, and I'm like, I can't help that. I don't have control over that.
Pittman's like really mad that his birthday is wrong, and I'm not making this up. He's like really mad that his birthday is wrong. If you go to MyGNR.com, and the last communication we had, we're just like, we don't own it. We can't do anything about your birthday being wrong.
Eric was the original owner. He's from Canada, and in about 2009, maybe 2011, he sold it to a guy. His username was UK Stubbs, And he owned it from about 2011 to just at the beginning of 2015 or 14, or 2015, and I bought it at the beginning of 2015. So it's back, Canadian owning it, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't like that. But
what's wrong with? I like Canadians. You have a handsome prime minister. I mean, hockey. Hockey should be our national pastime.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Some people don't, and that might have something to do with me. But it is what it is, and it is kind of a funny thing, and we can get into this later. But people on the forum, and when you do meet fans in real life or forum members on real life, there's this perception that, because I'm the owner and Russ is an administrator and the staff, we're all insiders and we're talking to the management, the band, and we're these people that have some sort of contact with the band. That's really not true. I mean, I'm just a guy that lives outside of Toronto that owns a website that's popular with the GNR fans, but I don't consider myself to be anyone special or anyone important.
Don't say that. I think you're important.
No, it really gets overplayed.
I'm being facetious, but I know what you're saying.
But it's funny when we meet fans in real life, they've got this perception that you're going backstage all the time and you can call Axel up, and it's really far from the truth.
I deal with the same thing just being in radio. Everyone thinks you have tickets on you all the fucking time. Yeah, I guess I have concert tickets. I just shit them out. This happened, no joke. I was wearing, it was like maybe a couple years ago, I was wearing a staff shirt for the station I was working at. And I go through a McDonald's, and the girl at the window, she's like, "Oh, you work for such and such?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Oh, do you have anything on you can give me?" My money to give me my fucking hamburger.
You're like, "Oh yeah, right here."
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's unfortunately the world that we live in. When you're some sort of, I don't want to use the authority because you don't say that. We've said Ian and I have said that since the beginning that, yes, we both have radio experience, which has given us the ability to do this podcast, but we're not insiders. We're just two fans that happen to make a podcast, happen to be in radio, and hopefully you like it. And it sounds like that's what you're trying to do, or you have done, I think, with the forum, because I've been following this for quite a while. I was telling Russ that when I first spoke to him back in the days of the Chinese democracy leaks. I know there are rules against it now, but at the time, or anything new, and not even just like audio or just trying to find out, snippets of new songs, but just information. That was the only place for like the longest time to go was a MyGNRForum, and I still frequent. We talk about you guys all the time, but you're right. It's the same thing. We get the same thing though here to just wrap up my pointless point. That we get the same thing whether in radio, whether it's tickets or we have certain information. I maybe it's partially our fault. I don't know about you. If you talk about or you post pictures with you and band members or whatever. Like today I posted, and I kid you not, I worked with Steve Harvey this morning, and there's a picture. I posted a picture because I'm a fame whore. But all my friends think that I hang out with celebrities, and it's like, no, I just happen to work in a place that these people happen to be sometimes. So
Steve Harvey from Family Feud.
Yeah, man. I was at our.
That's amazing. My wife and I, we watch the show every night. We love that show.
I wanted to get a picture not just for my own, so I can get likes and Instagram likes. I wanted to show my mom because she and my brothers watch Family Feud. So that's like one of the things that I do. I'm in Tribeca now, where we normally record Appetite. And, well, when I say it like that, it makes it sound like the record. But I'll leave it. It sounds cool. It sounds cool. It sounds cool. You know what I mean. But I was at our Uptown office because Steve Harvey, he is now en route to France for the holiday. So he was recording his morning show. I had to be at work at fucking 6 a.m., so I've been awake since 6. Yeah, and Steve Harvey was... Yeah, and on Sunday. He's recording his morning show for tomorrow. Because he's going. That's how. It's a lie, everybody. Everything on radio is a lie.
Yeah, wow.
So when I post pictures like that to wrap up my stupid point, people see that they think I'm always hanging out with rock stars. And I'm like, no, or Family Feud hosts. I'm like, no, I'm an idiot. I just happen to be in this line of work. You guys are.
Me, I was just assuming Steve Harvey was a huge GNR fan. That's why he was.
Yeah, I thought when I got your message, I'm like, wait, you're having Steve Harvey on? He's a huge. That's amazing. That's cool.
I will tell you this, and I have to follow up with him, and it is Guns N' Roses related, so we could bounce off it. Roy Orbison Jr., because obviously Roy Orbison is dead, but Roy Orbison Jr. was at our facilities maybe a couple weeks ago, and I saw he was following the AFD show on Twitter. You never know who's actually seriously, hey, I want to follow this show, or they're just trying to get followers, just in general.
Right.
So I followed them back anyway because I liked his ratio. I always pay attention to the following to followers ratio. And I actually messaged him when he was in the building doing his promo for his, I guess, a documentary for his father. And as I'm tweeting him, he walks into the studio that I was in, which is just odd timing. And I was like, hey, I'm Brando from Appetite for Distortion. Not thinking, I'm like, that sounds so fucking stupid. Like, hey, I'm from a Guns N' Roses podcast. And he's like, oh, yeah, I follow you guys. I'm like, really? He's like, I want to come on. I'm like, really? Like, no offense. I'm like, can you talk about Guns N' Roses? He's like, yeah, I used to hang out with Axl and Aaron back in the day, and basically cool. A Pretty Woman is like Sweet Child of Mine. And he starts going through the chord progression, and I was like, well, fuck me for assuming you couldn't talk about it. So next time, because he's on tour right now, so in the future, Roy Orbison Jr., again, just shit luck of mine, will be a guest for the AFD show. But,
well, I look forward to hearing that one.
Yeah, it should be good. But that is then, this is now with you guys. Because I know we got a little bit of info from Russ in that episode about him, the man. But I want to know about you a little bit, Downzy, because you're from Canada. And how did you get into Guns N' Roses? And I want to kind of character build and get to know you a little bit before we get into the bells and whistles of the forum and talk about some cool GNR stuff.
Sure. So, I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible because my history with GNR is coming up on, I don't know, almost 30 years. I was, a casual fan in the late 80s. I was only like 8 or 9 years old when the Appetite Destruction kind of hit. So I was a little too young for that. It was really the User Illusion albums that really got the hooks for me. November Rain got me to learn and play the piano, and I can play that song almost backwards. It had a huge influence on my life. And 90s, GNR kind of went away, and we were all sort of waiting to see what was going to happen. And the first time I went online in 95, 96 as a teenager, first thing I looked for was Guns N' Roses, and there really wasn't. There was like a couple homemade pages. There was no web presence, really. There was a little bit. I came across a mailing list called the Dust and Bones mailing list, which was run by a guy named Jeff Boreal. You will see some people in the current community that are still around from that era, and that mailing list was actually quite huge for the time. I think it had thousands of subscribers. The owner actually would get invited out to Axl's house in Malibu to listen to material, and we were just like, oh my God, this is amazing. So that kind of sustained us. Yarmo, who owns Here Today, Gone to Hell, and is now subsequently an employee of the band, was a member, and it was a tight-knit community, and it was fun to be a part of because when people complain about, nothing's going on about GNR in the last few years, in the last 15 years, man, it's totally different than what it was back then. Like from 96 to 2000, there was nothing. I mean, literally you didn't know what Axl looked like other than that one random mugshot, didn't know what the sound was going to be, didn't even know who was in the band. It was, you were in the desert back then. And so the GNR community really grew out of there. Even though people may not know much about it, it was that mailing list that was the launching pad for guys like Yarmo, and then later on from that forum, the Here Today, then MyGNR kind of picked up the mantle as well. And so I came up with that, and I've kind of grown up in sort of like that holding pattern with GNR for most of my adult life. So just to put this to end sort of my history, when I was around getting more and more involved in the forums, and in about 2014, the previous owner of MyGNRForum, UK Subs, he was going through some issues at the time, and his interest in the band was starting to waver, and he decided he wanted to sell. I decided I was just newly made a mod, but I was like, this forum needs a serious overhaul from the business. The business was terrible. It was losing $500-600 a month. And so I was able to get all of that back on track. And so I bought it from him in early 2015. And thankfully, the team that was in place decided to stay on. Russ has been seriously a lifesaver in keeping that place afloat. He really is the biggest presence in terms of keeping everyone behaved and making it the forum that I think most people want it to be. And I've been really thankful that I have such a great staff, or I'm part of a staff, I should say, that keeps the forum as vibrant and as healthy as it is today. So that's to give you a quick 2-minute or 3-minute, I don't know how long it was, but to give you a history of who I was and how I came to be the owner of the forum.
Now, you do all this, kind of how I do the podcast is just because you're a fan and you have a normal life, correct?
That's right, and that's right. And so to get back to a previous point about, this idea that we're insiders, well, no, we're not. We're just random average fan. Well, we're not average fans. We're hardcore fans. People, my friends think I'm nuts with everything that I've got going on with GNR and how many shows I've seen. I think I just saw my 18th or 19th show. The 2 shows in Toronto were my 18th and 19th show. But I go, well, come to the forum and you'll meet some real, I don't even consider myself, in the top 5% of GNR fans. Like, there's some guys out there, like our one of our staff members, Black Sabbath. I think he's gone to 15 shows this year.
And how?
Now he's in his early 20s, and I think he's got. I don't want to
a trust fund
too much about it, but he's got a lifestyle that allows him to do it. I remember being 21, and I was living at home at the time, and I got to see 5 shows with Buckethead, and because I was living at home, so I had a little more disposable income. So I went to I was actually, it's funny that Russ and I were at the same show in Detroit in 2002 where they played a whole bunch of material from Chinese Democracy, and went to London, Ontario, Toronto, Boston. I was at the Madison Square Garden show. I think you were at that one there, Brando.
The O2 one or the one this year?
The O2.
Okay.
Were you at that one?
Yes, I was. That was, Axel made some sort of Conan joke, and they were passing out donuts.
The donut joke, yeah. And he came on early, too. I think I was blown away by how early he came on, because all the other shows, they were coming on at 11, and Madison Square Garden, I think it was close to 10 o'clock, and that was electric. And then I went to the Philly show, and we all know what happened there. And,
got canceled. But the O2 show was, that was your perfect conditions, being Canadian. There was like a blizzard that day.
And so for me, Russ was fortunate. I never got to see the band back in their heyday, even though I was a huge fan. My friends had tickets to the Toronto show in '92, during when they were playing with Metallica. And I was 12 or 13 years old at the time, and I think the Montreal riots had just happened. And my parents are like, no. They said, you can go see that. And fair enough. I was a 12-year-old kid. There'd just been a riot. I get it. But they go, you can go see the band the next time they come to town.
Okay.
Well, that never happened.
That never worked out for your parents.
Well, it worked out for my parents. So when 2002 came around, I had, I just had to see them as much as I could. So that's why I went to 5 shows and saw them 5 times again in 2006 and 3 times in 2010 and a sprinkle of times since then. And every tour is its own sort of period. And so, it brings in a different group of fans, and there's different waves, and being on the forums, you can see the cyclical nature of GNR fandom, which is really interesting to watch and participate in.
Why do you think, we were talking about this a little bit briefly off the air, and I know Ian and I have discussed this. why do you think GNR fans are? Because I don't see this kind of rabid behavior or maybe like kind of like siding with teams because with all the personnel changes. I only will see that if you're, a Swiftie or a Katy Cat or just some sort of, teeny bopper, because that's. But it's not even like it's. I wouldn't compare, of course, Guns N' Roses fans to being like teeny bopper, but I'm saying being involved in that level online. Yeah. And if you go to like the older bands, I know Kiss, has forums and there's a podcast out there and other bands, but I just don't see it, especially with the diversity that comes with the Guns N' Roses fans.
For me, number one, and this is no disrespect to those other artists that were named, but, when you're talking about material like Appetite for Destruction, Sweet Child of Mine, November Rain is Strange, these are like transcendent, this is transcendent material that goes across generations. And that's why, to this day, you'll hear of people that are, 11, 12 years old just getting into Appetite like all of us did. But the big thing is that GNR fans are passionate like almost no other band I've ever seen. Like, right. People don't just have an opinion about, November Rain in general. They have an opinion about every version of November Rain that's ever been played. And a serious opinion about it, So it's, I think that a lot of times these people get so passionate about it, but it's because this isn't just, or at least in my opinion, I would assume in all of our opinions, this isn't just average material. This isn't like it's, just a regular pop song that comes and goes. So much, they have a really small discography, but so much of it is so transcendent across generations. And, it'll be quite some time before any of their material goes away from regular rotation on any rock station.
No, not at all. Not at all. Especially with Appetite playing, and I use this analogy and this segue into it. I look at Guns N' Roses as like a sports team. And the segue is because, Welcome in Paradise City.
So did Axl at one point.
Right. So I look at it like a sports team where the passionate fans are watching. If you're watching replays of last night's game and you're questioning certain decisions or the replays, and hey, his game last week was better than this week. I mean, it's kind of the same thing with Axl. Like, his performance was better than that performance. Why did they choose to do this and that? It's fascinating.
If you go into our the tour section of the show or of the forum, you take a random show thread with 20 or so pages. There will be several people. That's a good jungle scream. That was better than 2 nights ago. It's a much better, much better jungle intro than, oof, last night's jungle scream was much better than tonight's,
Yeah, that's just so odd to me.
It's crazy to see. Yeah. But I think so many people are so connected with it in their personal lives that's why it, they've so many things in their life have happened to the tune of Welcome to the Jungle, so.
And it's great how the forum kind of really just divides up, because I've been to other forums as far as doing research for the show or just for my own fandom, and it's just the way it's organized into different, whether it's a general discussion or different versions of the band. So since there are so many opinions out there, and it's the fact that you're able to organize them well, and I don't know how you said, Downzy, that Russ is like your saving grace. I don't know how you monitor it all. That's gotta, I always because I'll let you jump off here. When I post an episode or even anything just in general, whether it's a stupid GNR meme or like today, I wished, by accident, Matt Sorum a happy 56th birthday, but a listener, James McCormick, corrected me. 57. Fucking Wikipedia didn't update, okay? Sorry.
Yeah, to be honest, that happened to me a couple of weeks ago, and my staff, particularly Power Age 5, likes to give me a hard time about it. I was kind of bragging about the fact that when GNR played Prostitute in Toronto, it had closed. I'd finally heard every song on Chinese Democracy performed live.
Oh, really? Okay.
And to my knowledge, I was the only person that had ever, outside that maybe an employee of the band, I think I was the only fan that had actually ever heard that, make that claim. And, I was like, oh, look at me, I'm special. And someone on the floor was like, you are aware of the fact that they played Rye-Head in 2002, and then they played the rest in Tokyo, and then they played the rest of the album in 2009. So I'm pretty sure. And I'm like, yeah, okay, maybe I'm not so special. The guys on there, I don't think anyone knows everything, but the culmination of knowledge on that forum is insane. So much so that, as much as Russ and I and the rest of the staff members like to think that we're experts, we don't know everything, and we make mistakes all the time, and we get called on it, and we're like, damn, that was wrong on that one. So, pardon the pun, but the forum is a bit of a jungle, and, you got to have a little thick skin sometimes. But I just wanted to touch upon the idea of what's different about GNR fans. I don't think necessarily it's something to do with the fans. I think it has something more to do with the nature of the band. GNR has never really been a band that's been great at fan outreach. They didn't even really have a website, I think, until 2006. They had some sort of like beta versions in the early 2002s, and it got shut down.
It was just like a logo, right? Half the time?
Yeah, and then
or shop.
They had a GNR online forum that got shut down when people started posting Axl's private information, and so they never really did much. And then Axl, and they don't really do interviews. If GNR is not Pearl Jam, they're not Bruce Springsteen. They're not these bands that bend over backwards to bring in fans and engage fans. Like fan engagement, up until maybe recently, Night Train, they're turning it around a bit. They just aren't a fan engagement band. And so, combine that with the fact that it took a long time to get a new album out, and they left at the prime. When they left in '93, they were the biggest band in the world. Not too many bands go out on top. And so there was a lot of people like myself that just go, well, wait a second. It was so amazing. I want to hear I want more. I want to hear more. You left me, with this great tour, the Use the Illusion tour, promises of new material. Now what? And so when you think about it, they don't do interviews, they don't do fan engagement, the promises of more material. It kept people holding on to the band, and the only way they could really engage in all that energy and excitement and curiosity was on the forums. And so we benefited from that, and we're happy to play our part in allowing people to stay engaged. And like you said, it's a team. It's very much like a sports team, which is actually something I've actually said to GNR management in person. I said, you have to accept the fact that people follow GNR like it's their favorite sports team. So, like, I live close to Toronto, so the Maple Leafs are everything here. But that just because you're a Maple Leafs fan doesn't mean you agree with everything they do. You love them. But when they make a silly mistake or an unforced error, you want to complain about it.
Well, they've been bad for a while. No offense.
Well, yeah. No.
I'm an Islander fan.
To be honest, I'm not a Maple Leafs fan. I actually root against them. I'm one of the minorities here, but I get it. And the band is sort of the same thing. Being able to vent and voice frustrations and complaints. Mm-hmm. I know initially for a long time the people in the management and the band members themselves really didn't like that. But it was cathartic for forum members or for fans, and it allowed them to go, okay, I complain about it, I feel better, I'm still a fan, I still love these guys, I still love the music, and I want to keep trucking kind of thing. So I think that all those dynamics sort of explains why MyGNRForum still exists and why there's still such a large online fan forum present. So I just thought I'd contribute my 2 cents on that.
Well, that's why you're here, to contribute more than 2 cents. But no, I completely understand that, and that's kind of what GNR is for a lot of us, myself included, where they're this kind of mysterious band. They're not like a Kiss. I know Ian brings them up all the time, that just shove everything in your face, and KissCon, and It's a lot. So I just feel like there's nothing left to the imagination. With Guns N' Roses, it feels like there's some sort of secret society about who may know what, and just, again, a collection of knowledge. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but ever since I've started the podcast, it's kind of made me feel like less of a dork. Or I think it was Russ that you mentioned, or your friends think you're crazy for being a part of this, or maybe it was you, Downzy, that mentioned it. And a lot of my friends think that I'm nuts about, even before I did the podcast. But what I've noticed that not just you, but fans across the world have not just the same amount of passion, but a lot of cases more passion, more knowledge than I have. So it's very comforting that there is this fan base out there that is just more than a fan base, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, we talked about this a little before the taping, but from about 2006 to around 2011, I traveled a ton to see GNR. And when you're in any city, it's, obviously you're going to see a bunch of GNR fans around the, the bars around the venue or whatever. So, that's not a big deal. You roll into some, whatever, Chicago, Youngstown, Ohio, or Manhattan, wherever you roll in, and obviously the surrounding bars, you're going to run into a bunch of GNR fans. But when I flew out to Vegas to see that second show in 2016, it was just insane to me. I mean, you could not look anywhere in Las Vegas without seeing a GNR shirt from some era. The whole city was just taken over by GNR fans. And I ended up throwing a pre-party earlier that day in my room on the Strip. And at one point in the day, we had 6 people representing from 6 different continents all at once in the same room. And it was just really like, holy cow, that's really, really, it's amazing. Like you said, to bring it back to your point, it makes you feel like less of the only person in the world that might still care what GNR is up to, and when someone else gives you, crap about it, and then you have an event like that happen, it's like, no, wait a minute, a lot of people really care about this. Like,
it's more than a lot. I'm just so surprised. I knew, obviously, they're this mega band. I'm just trying to think of what the biggest band was. I mean, GNR seems to be the last mega band, maybe other than like the Nirvanas and like that era. But I still consider them an overlap with that era, not so much the hair metal. But I mean, since that decade, the late 80s, early 90s, there don't seem to be many mega bands out there now. And so with that knowledge, and now coming across when I went to Giant Stadium last year, or Madison Square Garden just a few weeks ago, and just seeing the variety of ages and ethnicities, and it's just it's something else. And it's like, wow, I belong. I feel like I'm part of a group. I appreciate what you guys have been doing for a while. I mean, it's the only thing that was getting me any sort of GNR fix until, I don't know, even this reunion. Because you mentioned as far as the press, they don't. The only thing I would give them credit for is now with this Not in This Lifetime thing, I think they're pretty good with social media. As far as trying to get fan interaction and hey, send us a tweet, we'll upgrade you. So I think their social media has gotten better, but just like you said, in general, they don't do interviews. Maybe they don't. Not now, anyway.
No, they don't, and I don't think they will. I think they've got too good of a thing going. There's too much money on the table. I mean, I think when this is all said and done, they'll probably sell something like $1 billion worth of tickets. And I think they're gun shy about doing press, considering how it hasn't gone well for them in the past. And one person says one thing and it gets taken out of context, and then that brings up a band meeting, or then it creates acrimony in the band. They just and this is just conjecture by me. I certainly don't know this for sure, but I think it's probably in everyone's interest to keep their mouth shut and focused on the music and focus on the shows, because they don't need to do press. I mean, they're selling out arenas and stadiums all over the world, so why do it?
You're right, and again, that's the sports analogy I like to use, because they have to do press after a game. They have to do it, and they have to be careful how they do it. I know you have your Toronto Argonauts, but I mean, in the NFL, I mean, with Patriots and Bill Belichick, he says so little. Just do your job. Yeah. Just do your job. Yeah. And I can imagine, and I respect Guns N' Roses operating the same way, because there is a lot of bullshit out there, slinging mud and things said in the press between teammates, between bandmates. So it could be just your opinion, but I definitely think that there's some validity to that.
But the funny thing about that is they're not unopinionated people. I mean, Brando, have you ever met anyone like a band member or like Axl or any of the management team or something like that?
The only person I've met, which was a couple times, was Bumblefoot.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had the experience, the good fortune of meeting Axl a couple times, and the first time I met him was in 2010, and he is not shy on his opinions, and he loves to talk, and he's gregarious, and he's funny, he's witty, he's a really nice guy, and I've spoken to the management a few times, and they have their opinions. They're very opinionated, but they're also very, very guarded, and I think in some reasons, justifiably so. This is a conscious decision on their part because they're looking at the greater good, and I don't necessarily fault them on that, even though it's very frustrating for us as fans who want to know more, want to understand, well, how did the reunion happen? Who said what to who initiated? You know, I mean, we've got some of it from Axl, but it's just one of those things you have to ask yourself. I think it's an either or proposition. Do you want to enjoy this tour and this reunion that we never thought we'd get, or do you want the nitty gritty details that, you know, if they got into, maybe, you know, might not serve the greater good? And I think in the end they're making that conscious decision not to engage the media and answering questions in the way that we would kind of expect in a situation like this.
Yeah, they didn't do a press conference like what Van Halen did or what Motley Crue did, and even as much press as what Motley did. That last tour, I guess, had no desire to see it because I knew how much they hated each other, and that would come out in the press. So that would bother me if it came out that there are things that I know you guys have speculated on, topic of discussion on the forum and on the show. That would you go see them if you knew it was just for the money? You know, if they were still hard feelings. So that's why I think and things that are also discussed in the forum and here on the podcast, we get so much joy and when we see Axl smile or go over to Slash and give him a hug, so it's you could be right. I mean, obviously, I would love to have one of these guys or gal on the podcast at some point. So I was just for selfishly, I'd love to talk to them, but as a fan, I don't want anything to ruin it. I'm surprised, and you know, I want to hear your guys' opinion. I thought they were going to be done in 2018, or at least take a break, but they added more tour dates to this not in this lifetime tour, and they're still doing it. So they either like money that much because they sure have plenty of it, or they just haven't gotten enough of each other and they want to continue doing what they do.
For me personally, I think a lot of it is like a make good thing. Like they made sure to slide through St. Louis, and you know, they're pretty much going to everywhere they can. I think that, you know, a lot of this is kind of an unsaid, you know, sorry about all the years of family, you know, and you know what I mean? I think that's why. I mean, of course, I'm not saying that money has nothing to do with it, but I think that the reason why so many different places are getting it is for exactly that reason. I have a whole bunch of opinion. I think Axl's on quite a bit of a cleanup tour myself, just for, you know, the overall opinions that have been of him over the years and whatnot, and then, you know, getting back together with Slash. You know, putting everything he can into the shows, everything he did with AC/DC, I really think the guy's trying to make up for lost time, you know, as far as his opinions, the opinions been of him for years, and, you know, deserved or not. That's my personal opinion on why things are going the way they are now.
I agree with you. I think that's why he's so happy now, or it appears to be, that he's trying to make up for lost time, just like you said, that I had all these years of my youth where I could have been doing this with these guys. For whatever reason, it didn't happen that way, and now he's just trying to, you know, cram before a test, and I love it. The fact he doesn't have to do that. You know, we can just do they can just do a farewell thing, but that they're seemingly going out of their way for St. Louis or Montreal. And, you know, my ex-girlfriend who's from Ottawa, that first go around, she had to go to Toronto, and she was upset about it. Because it's, what is it, 4 hours from Toronto to Ottawa or something?
Yeah, and it's a terrible drive.
Yeah, so, but now when they came back around to Ottawa, she was like, oh, it was great. I'm going to go to the Toronto show also. But the fact, so it's very cool. And every time they announce new dates, you see people like, hey, what about it here? What about it here? And little do they know on this next leg that sometimes it does come up. So it's good for them. They seem to be doing a good thing for a lot of people. Making a lot of people happy.
Yeah, someone has been, I was 12 years old watching the Paris pay-per-view and just being in awe of these rock gods, and I grew up with them. They're kind of like the soundtrack of my life. And so these people mean something to you, and you have your own selfish reasons for wanting a reunion, but you also, I'll speak for myself here, it's kind of like divorce. You want your parents to get along, right? And to see Axl and Slash on stage smiling and having a good time, it's just, look, money is obviously a reason why they're doing it, but it can't be the only reason. Axl strikes me as the kind of guy that if he and Slash did not get along and couldn't reconcile, he would sell his house in Malibu and downsize before he'd share a stage with somebody he didn't like. I just don't believe that this is just for the money. I think there was a reconciliation. And for me personally, as someone that looks at these guys and go, they mean a lot to me, even though I have no sort of personal connection with them, it's just really cathartic to see these two guys share a stage and what it must mean for them to bury all of that sort of bullshit and anger and just to enjoy life and play the songs that mean so much to them and everyone else. It's just a really great thing to see, and so I'm happy in that way, outside of my own selfish reasons.
I completely agree. And to bounce off something you said before, talking about, Estranged and November Rain, and GNR has these songs unlike other bands. It's the rabbit hole we can go down with, and that's how I look at someone like Axl and Slash. And, we all in our life have some sort of grudge, maybe with a friend or falling out with a family member. And I don't know, you look at something like that, if you do look up to them or they mean something to you, it says, and it shows, hey, nothing lasts forever. Even
that's right.
Yeah, even if anger, because as I've gotten older, I don't want to be angry. I used to really identify with the angry Axl. Now I kind of now I identify more with the softer side of it. So there's a lot of depth there to these people. There's a lot of layers to these people. All of them, Duff, Slash. So it's just more than just getting these performances that we've always wanted to see live. I think it's just very interesting at a human level, because there are still bands. Skid Row still refuses to get back with Sebastian Bach. They're completely happy playing casinos, and they just don't want to deal with the stress. And they're, again, I kind of, as you guys may have related some GNR lyrics or songs to your life, I relate these things to my life. Can I get past this certain bridge with this person to reconnect? So I mean, there's just a lot more to it than what's on what's face value.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think that has a huge play in why the online fan base is so big. Because worldwide, there's people literally, as I've seen in person, worldwide, there's people that are just as touched by any given GNR song as you are, and it's really, really amazing to see. And that's why a lot of people in the four corners of the earth, that's the easiest way for them to connect is through these forums. And it's the opinions are just as varied as the personalities, and they're both strong. The personalities are strong, the opinions are strong, and in a way you say, well, why does this happen? And then you sit back and look at a guy like Axl, and it's like, well, of course that guy's fans are going to be that way. He's got a strong personality. He's really opinionated. So people that are drawn to that are probably going to be cut from at least a similar amount of the same cloth.
Oh, 100%, and that's what I understand. And it's nice because I had certain friends that would be on Team Slash, and I mean, you get that all the time in the forum. Team Slash, Team Axl before the reunion. So did you notice any sort of transition from like before the reunion with from
the online fan base? I don't know how Downzy feels, but I don't. I don't notice anybody running around who used to praise, Ron or or well, not DJ, but Robin or whoever turning around going, oh, now I get it. Slash is the greatest thing ever. Like the people who loved Slash before love him now. I get my head caved in constantly on the forums because I still stick by the fact that Robin Fink is my favorite guitar player that's ever been in GNR, and I don't care who doesn't like that opinion, like Slash back or not. That's my opinion.
You're allowed to have it, but I would just say why.
Well,
I just want to know
the
why.
Rest of the fan base, geez, that's a whole different podcast.
Okay, all right, fair enough. We'll save that for part 3.
That's me. I give them a hard time. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
I know. But I do, Downzy, I don't know if you see it differently. I don't see anybody with, everybody still has the same opinions they had before, really, or at least in our community.
No, with respect to opinions of particular band members, I don't think that's changed too much. There was a significant change in tone on the forum once the reunion thing started to percolate and then happen. When I became the owner of the forum, things were really nasty and negative, and the forum did earn its reputation for being a place of where people would just go and complain, and they're just angry, and it was just such a negative place. And I said to the staff, we're never gonna censor anyone for having an opinion about a particular point, but we gotta clean up some of this just ugliness and vitriol. I mean, we have our really only rule for the most part. We have a bunch of rules on the forum, but the one that we really abide by is that you can attack the point, but not the person. Mm-hmm. If someone doesn't like something, you can go, well, no, or someone, I don't like that. Well, okay, I don't like your opinion. That's fine. But once you start getting the personal attacks, and back 3 years ago, the forum was kind of very heavily lopsided in that direction. And in my few encounters with GNR management, that's what they would bring up. They said it's just so ugly. Like, why would we engage in people that are just so bitter and angry? And I said, that's a valid point. I don't disagree with you. I said, but here's what's going to happen. You do something positive. You guys either put out an album or some big development like a reunion or something like that happens. You're going to see the tone change almost overnight, and that's what happened. And it's been really refreshing and great to see that you could come to a forum like ours and both speak positively and critically about something. And so that's been the biggest change in the last couple of years, is that there's been this sort of organic shift to the positive that's been refreshing.
It really has, and I see it. It's not just with the dedicated Guns N' Roses forums like you. It's just with Facebook. Like anyone can comment, and just the positivity that's been coming out. Where you just go back a few years, Guns N' Roses was becoming a joke with Chinese democracy.
When they're playing bowling alleys, it's hard to defend them as a sort of this viable creative force, right? So
But it was just because Axl. He had this because he never spoke up against it. Had this Howard Hughes psycho, stereotype about him in the out there in the world where Duff and Slash are doing their thing, but GNR just disappeared, or Axl disappeared. Chinese democracy, was it ever going to come out? So they were becoming a joke. So I can understand the part of it where fans could be. Because you get angry and you get frustrated, and it's like I love this band, and it comes out, and then who do you attack? You can't attack Axl. You can't. So you attack, behind your keyboard somebody else. I mean, that's the internet in all its glory. So it's very cool.
One thing I want to interject real quick. I sincerely apologize, but it turns out I'm much shorter on time than I thought I was, so I'm going to have to drop out in about 5 minutes.
All good, man.
So I just want to let you know that. But one thing I will say about that and the whole everybody attacking each other thing is, the thing is, and this is what I was saying earlier about this music being tied to people's lives and whatnot. When people see an opinion on, whatever, however this member played estranged or whatever, I think a lot of times they really connect in their mind to, like, you are attacking this thing that is so important to me. And that's why people get so upset about it, and what Downzy touched on, we don't have any. I will take it all day long. Like just a second ago about my opinion about Rabid Pink, right? As long as you want to construct an argument, we can have a debate and a conversation about it. I'm happy to talk about it all day long. But what we would get is, people would just get frustrated and just, well, you're stupid. Okay, well, okay, wonderful argument, wonderfully presented.
Right.
It's not, like
your mama wears combat boots.
But I really, really looked at it over the years because for a long time I just didn't understand it. Because there's still a certain cross section of the online fans that are only happy when they're attacking other people, and I for the longest time I couldn't understand it at all. And I really think that's it. I think so many people have their own set of expectations about this band or how this song should be played or how that memory in their life, because it's connected to that song, should be regarded. That they really take it as a personal thing when someone else, plays this song wrong or someone else likes that version of the song better than the one that they're used to or whatever. And I think that's a really big thing with the online community and why people don't communicate as well online as they can. And the other thing that I wanted to mention, and we talked about this earlier, is I have yet to meet a GNR fan in person who is even close to as hostile in person as they are online. And I think a lot of it has to do with, just the way society is these days and everything is so text-based. You can't, like I made reference earlier to what went on in Vegas. There were people in the room whose usernames have had quote unquote wars for years who are, laughing and carrying on with each other because it's just a lot easier to have those discussions in person. So I think the balance that we do find online is kind of a minor miracle to some extent, because we do manage to keep the waters fairly calm. But when you get GNR fans in person, you really see that passion come out, and you really see people's eyes light up, and you can tell how passionate they are about things. And I think people tend to relate to each other a little bit better.
I couldn't agree more. And it's really just been amazing, because people talking to each other in line and just happy to be there. Like, we all know this is special. This is an event. So it's just very cool, this roller coaster, this band, although, of course, frustrating at times, has brought us on, because not many bands are like this. I don't know if any band is like this. That's why they're special to us. So I couldn't agree anymore.
With that being said, if it's cool with you, I'm going to go ahead and drop off. I greatly appreciate you having me back on.
Yeah, no, of course, Russ.
All right, thanks a lot. I'll talk to you later, guys.
Thanks, Russ. It was good talking to you.
Yeah. All right, see you, man.
When was the last time you spoke to Russ in person and not online, Downzy?
Probably a couple months ago. We've been really, he's got a big job promotion, and so he's been kicking butt in his career, and
cool.
Somehow is able to still manage and be the all-star. I mean, no disrespect to the rest of my team or to our team. I just not my team. Even though I'm the owner, I consider myself an equal. Any kind of moderator decision or administrative decision is always made on a consensus basis with the staff. I really appreciate a lot of these guys were moderators and administrators before I even was a mod or even a regular member. So I really value their opinion. But anyways, get back to your point. I probably spoke to him a couple months ago over the phone, but I've just been really busy in my own personal life. And then he's got his thing going on. But the nice thing, we do have two moderators that live in England, so unfortunately we don't get to see them very often. But there's in person, or I have never met them in person, but we talk to each other all the time over Facebook and whatnot. But there's a group of people that live relatively close. We have one moderator that lives in upstate New York, another one that lives in Pennsylvania, a couple live in Pennsylvania. High Voltage, who was an administrator for a long time and now helps out with the IT stuff. He now lives in Colorado, and actually last year a bunch of us got together to see AC/DC's last show in Philadelphia with actual singing. So that was a lot of fun for us when we get together, because it's one thing, like as Russ was saying, it's one thing to talk to people online, but it's a completely different dynamic when you get to meet them in person or speak to them over the phone.
Oh, absolutely, and that's kind of triggered this this podcast because I enjoy talking about Guns N' Roses online with friends. But when Ian brought up the idea, I was like, well, no one's ever done that. Let's see how this works. And 35 episodes later.
We get a lot of positive feedback about the podcast.
Thank you.
Like I said, we used to have our own, but we're just all so busy we can't manage. So it's been great to hear someone pick up the reins and devote an hour or so to Guns N' Roses, because I think when we talked about this earlier, I mean, it's a way of giving back to not only the fans, but the band and just the community. And it's great. It's another way of feeling a part of the whole thing. And it's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun, and it's been nothing but a positive experience. And it's because of not even just getting all this Guns N' Roses talk off my chest, but talking to people like you. Of course, I've gotten. I can't believe I got to talk to to Dave Kushner and Anthony Bozo when I read Slash's autobiography, and then with Anthony, and then I'm interviewing Anthony a few years later. So I mean, I have those cool moments, but with the fans and just people from, and we will get him on the on a show for another fan spotlight. And I said his name last time. I know he's from Croatia. I can't believe I forgot his name, but him fighting in wars, listening to Appetite for Destruction. So I mean, it's just all these different stories out there, and people reaching out to us and just saying this is really cool to hear people talk about Guns N' Roses, because I have that same amount of passion. And I want to have more fan spotlights on. I want to, and that's why I like you, Downzy, a regular guy. I'm a regular guy or a regular gal, whatever, and to talk about how this band has affected you or, changed you in a little bit, or kind of it's pushed you in this path of life. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah,
it is interesting. When I bought the forum, the previous owner says, "Oh, okay, great. I'll introduce you to Beta." One of the managers of GNR. I go,
sure.
Why would you do that? And I go, and then it sort of dawned on me, am I now some sort of bridge between, because I own this forum, do I have some role to play here? And it never even occurred to me, and nor is it really something I ever really want. So it was kind of this sort of dynamic that just sort of landed on my lap, and I initially I didn't really know how to handle it, and it's not something it's not something I really wanted. So I just wanted the forum to continue. The previous owner told me that if I didn't buy it, he was just going to shut it down. And no disrespect to other forums out there, but I wasn't a fan. I didn't like how they were run or the people that was populating them. And I still love talking about Guns N' Roses. And the only place that I really liked doing it was on MyGNRForum. So I figured, well, if I want this place to continue, I guess I got to buy it.
With the permission of your wife, I assume.
Well, she's very, very tolerant. So my car, it's an old Audi TT, and so my license plate has WTTJ, and so it's welcome to the jungle, and then TT in the middle for the car. And so on her first date, she saw that, so she knew what she was getting into.
That's really funny. I like that.
Yeah, so it is very surreal at times. Like I said, I don't consider myself an insider. I've never really wanted to play that role. I think it's a dangerous game, being in it, putting yourself out there with information, saying, oh, this is what's happening or this is what's going to happen, because more times than not, you're going to end up being wrong.
There's a lot of responsibility.
Even if your information is 100% accurate, doesn't mean it's going to happen, right? And so I learned a long time ago, it's just not something that it's not a service I really want to run. I just want the forum to be a place to discuss. It used to be that way. I mean, the previous owner, the first owner, Eric, I mean, he was well tied into the band, and he would get some information here and there. And Yarmo certainly was well connected with the band and do what he can to pass along any information that either he was allowed or felt comfortable sharing. I just never saw myself as someone that would provide that kind of service. And I know people out there are probably maybe disappointed by that we should be trying to do whatever we can to root out as much information as possible. But, that's not my business. I don't want to get in the way of the band's business. I just want to be a fan. I want to provide a place for fans to interact. That's all the forum is supposed to be, in my opinion.
It seems like a home. It's just like a home where we should all feel comfortable talking about our favorite band.
That's right. And previous administrators have run into trouble where they've injected themselves into the business of Guns N' Roses. And it's not ended well for those people, and it's just not something that we need. So that's kind of when I took things over. I said to the staff, let's try to make it a more a healthier environment, and let's try to stop trying to be insiders and passing along information that usually almost always ends up being wrong. Let's pass along what we can. I remember when the reunion was announced. Axl was supposed to go on the Jimmy Kimmel show, and
right.
And it all of a sudden I did have a contact that I unfortunately I can't share who it was, but I got a message from someone saying it's not going to happen. He's not going to be on. Let everyone know, and so I did, and we were the first people to let people know that the Kimmel interview wasn't going to happen. And just because we don't want people tuning in Kimmel and then get disappointed, we figured, well, let's try to break the news and so on. So when those type of things, when I knew for certain things are going to happen, I'll try to pass along. But things get told to me all the time in confidence that I'm like, I have no place in saying these things. I don't want to promote myself. I'm not trying to endear myself to people. It's not my business. So it gets tricky, and it's something that I never would have imagined when I bought the place. It's not what I wanted or anticipated, but there's a politics to it that you find yourself getting involved in, and it's a weird thing sometimes.
Well, I think you're walking that tightrope pretty well.
Well, thank you. Many, there's others out there that disagree, but you just do the best you can, and you do what you think is right. And
that's all you can do.
If you're not pissing someone off, you're not doing things right. So,
yeah, that's Axl's MO, right? How many guys did he piss, how many people did he piss off? And we look up to him.
That's right. I mean, you can only be true to yourself, and just to get back to one of your previous points about sort of the way that people look at Axl and the mystery and the anger. There's an angry Axl and then a happy Axl, and the thing is like the few times that I've interacted with him personally, he's honestly one of the most gentleman, funniest, nicest guys I've met. And he's so different than sort of the public perception of him. And it's almost a shame that he doesn't put himself out there more, because he would do his image such a favor, a service, if people kind of got to know the real him. But at the same time, he's a very private person, and so I guess he's willing to accept those costs. I don't know. I don't want to speak for him, but it's an interesting dynamic about him, that he's this really nice, kind guy, but doesn't let other people see that in a public sphere.
Especially in today's world with just celebrity in general. And, TMZ, I know they caught Axl, before Axl DC was announced, they caught them in the same recording studio. And he, of course, there's, I think, that Page 6 story about him partying till 6 a.m. with Tom Jones. God, I hope that. And
Axl can party. I'll tell you what. I mean, I'm 37, so I'm almost 20 years younger than him. I mean, in 2010, it's a long story. I'll save it for another time, but I ended up at the after party. This was before I was owner of the forum, and just stars aligned. And I was out with Axl, and Tommy Stinson was there, and some other band members there. And there was a core of about 8 or 9 of us that partied till about 8:39 in the morning.
Oh my God.
And he was getting up the next day. Like, we went back to the hotel, and he was, I left around 8, 9 in the morning, and he was getting up in a few hours to go play a sold-out show in Montreal, and it took me 4 days to recover. It was. I don't know how he does it. Like, he's a machine, and it's amazing to watch him, party the way he does, and then and be able to perform the way he does. It's really, really impressive.
Axl, you are the Super Bowl of self-abuse.
I needed to find that soundbite. Yeah, no, it's interesting. And I think I've said before, I like the fact that they're going on early so I can go to bed early. I'm even younger than you, 34, and I can't do that, man, even when during my college days. So, I mean, it's something else, especially if he's still doing it, and, you know, Slash and Duff are sober, so I didn't know if that was going to be a part of it. I don't think Axl was the level of like a Vince Neil, but you just never know what certain people are comfortable with. So that is cool, and you're not the first person to say who's met Axl and has expressed those sentiments. And I like that. That's what I wish. That's what I want. If I were to talk to him, I want to find out. I want to get that out of him. I want him to tell funny stories. He just seems like he has that. He has that kind of personality.
He does. He's really one of the most interesting people you'll ever. If you hopefully you get a chance to talk to him, but he's really, really interesting. And yeah, and then the thing is, over the 14 or 15 years that I've been on the forums, I don't think I've ever come across one person that has run into him that's had a bad experience. You know, other than maybe a TMZ reporter at the airport, or you know,
or like a writer
who oversteps their grounds, bounds. But yeah, no, most people that get the good fortune to meet him in person has nothing but great things to say. So it's on the one hand, you understand he's a private person. I get that. But on the other hand, it's like, Axl, you know, you put yourself out there a little more, you know, that public perception of you that's kind of been carrying on for 25 years, that would go away in a second. I think it was funny. When I met him in 2010, I thought, you know, I woke up the next morning and I went up, I think I was still posting pretty religiously at Here Today, Gone Tomorrow, Gone to Hell, Yarmo's forum, and I looked through many of my posts, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I said this about him. I'm going to delete that. I felt terrible because, you know, it's very, when you meet someone, you see the humanity of them, and you see them outside of not just this sort of some abstract rock god type. These are actual people, and so. You kind of moderate and look at things differently, and it's a humbling experience.
That's very cool. Before, because I know you probably have to, because your wife is ready to pop in any second, by the way, right?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that my wife's due in about a week, and so I was nervous that I'd get a knock I'm just in my office here, and I get a knock on the door and say, gotta go, but fortunately the baby's held off, so...
But... What about for the sake of the show? I mean, if you induced labor, we can have a live, you know, water breaking on the air. I mean, I don't know if that's good for ratings.
As I said earlier, my wife's a very understanding and cooperative person, but I think there might be a there. So.
She'll have an audio of that moment for the rest of her life.
Yeah. I think I might be a single father and to do something like that.
Fair enough. But have you gotten your little guy or gal a onesie yet, or the GNR lullaby? Are you prepping to make another, like a new Guns N' Roses fan? Have you? Oh
yeah, I mean, you know, my wife knew what to expect, so I actually had been giving out some of my friends who had kids before me. I gave out GNR onesies, and a few of them have actually given them back to me because they're older now. So like, well, you know, and then I actually just last week. I ordered, and it just arrived Friday. It was a matching Guns N' Roses T-shirts. I think you can find it. A little plug for the official GNR merch store. They have a shirt that says I listen to GNR with my kid, and there's a much smaller version of the same shirt that says I listen to GNR with my dad.
Yeah, I have seen that. I like that.
It's cute. And then I've got the little tiny 3-inch toys of Axl and Slash coming. I'm going to put on. My wife has done a really nice job of decorating the nursery with, like, you know, the animals and I'm so going to have my little Axl and Slash figurines on the shelves. And, yeah, no, this kid, they're not going to have a choice. They're going to be fans. So looking at that, that's very exciting for me.
Well, mazel tov. I know it's not time yet, but mazel tov in advance. Good for you.
Thank you very much.
One last, because I know you brought it up off the air, and I know you touched on it briefly, but you met Beta, correct? You had lunch?
Yeah, and so this isn't something that I've ever really discussed before publicly.
Because it's interesting. Because I mean, everyone who's I'm assuming people who are listening to a Guns N' Roses podcast know who Beta is.
Yes.
But I don't know if you want to just briefly who she is, because it's a very interesting dynamic in this band, and of course who Axl Rose is. Yeah,
and I think to understand the story of Guns N' Roses and what they are and where they are now, you really have to sort of understand who Beta and her family is. They've played a pivotal role in not just Axl's story, but Guns N' Roses' story over the years. They're very polarizing figures. She was basically Axl's assistant in the early mid-'90s, and at some point, I believe in 2011 or 12, they formed a company called Team Brazil. Her and her son Fernando and her daughter Vanessa. And so they're a tight-knit family management company that manages Axl and Guns N' Roses. And they've kind of had their hands on the reins for the last few years. And so I've had a few interactions with her. And now everyone has different, I've heard some not so great stories, but I can only speak for myself. They've always been very nice to me. They've never been, expressed any sort of vitriol or anger towards me. And I've always had very pleasant experiences, even though there haven't been many. It's been quite pleasant. And so I don't really have too many bad things to say about them. I know, like I said, they're controversial in the fan community. Some people want to blame them for every mistake GNR's ever made, which I think is pretty ridiculous. And then other people kind of understand that, well, they're working with Axl Rose, and that may not be the easiest job at times. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. So they're interesting people. They've been very nice to me. And I did have a kind of an interesting encounter with Beta a few years ago after I bought the forum, and the previous owner introduced me to her over email. Just exchanged introductions and nice to meet you. And I was in LA. I have another, so my work life, I run a company and I had some business to deal with in LA. So I flew down there for a few days, and I messaged Beta just saying, hey, I'm in LA. I thought, as the new owner, maybe there's a chance we could meet up and just discuss. And it was one of those things I was like, there's no reason for her to meet with me. I'm just a guy who owned the website. But, while I'm there, I got a few days to kill. Why not extend an invitation? And amazingly enough, she agreed. And so I ended up having lunch with her in Malibu. And again, you're just sitting there, this very surreal experience that, I'm just a guy from Canada sitting with GNR's manager. And the reason, so when I bought the forum, my main objective was to try to give back to the community, to the fans. And I thought, well, if I can make the forum start making some money, some serious money, what I could do with that money is if the band goes on tour, I can buy tickets and give them away. And we did that last year. We gave away a couple of tickets. We've given away books and shirts, and I threw a GNR pre-party in Toronto last year. That was a fair amount of money. So I've always tried to take whatever profits that the forum generates and gives back to the fans. So an idea that I had at the time was, well, if I could get access to the sponsors of GNR, they could advertise on the forum, and we could create some sort of profit sharing thing. And this was before the whole reunion thing was happening. And so I brought up the idea to Beta, and I think initially there was some interest, but then the reunion happened, and whatever pittance that we could have generated through advertising was nothing compared to what they were about to make with the reunion tour. So that kind of went away. But it was just an interesting experience, and I do encourage, if anyone has the opportunity to meet with Beta or Fernando or Axl, anyone involved in the band, go there as people. Don't go there as a fan. Go there as someone that you're going to be a fan, but you're engaging them as a person And that's what I did. I kind of just sat there and shut up and just listened to what she had to say. And it was just very interesting. And I haven't met her since then. I've had a few text message exchanges, but nothing. They don't really have much to do with the forum, nor, it's not really, they don't really need it. I mean, they have their own website. They have their own forum. They run their own operation. We're completely independent. We're self-funded. We don't get any sort of material gain, or we don't get any kind of financial help from the band. But they're very interesting people. And, she told me her opinions on a few matters that obviously I'm not going to repeat here, but
Understood.
They're very interesting people, and they're aware of the criticisms, and it's not like they necessarily disagree with all of it, but they, like she told me when I met with her, she goes, I just don't like the ugliness on the forums. And I said, yeah, I completely agree. And she goes, there's some things I get that, if we're not doing anything, or if Axl puts, it's not Axl, but if the band, plays a shorter set list or something like that, and people are like, hey, I wanted to hear this. She goes, I get that, fans can complain and whatnot, but it's just when they go after people personally and call them the worst things under the sun, it's just like, I don't want to be around that. And fair enough. I completely understand that, nor would I. So, it was definitely an interesting experience being able to speak to someone like that and hear their side of things. And so hopefully they engage more publicly, because I think their story is one that most people need to hear. You may not necessarily agree with everything they have to say, which is fine. I don't think anyone has 100% of the truth, but it's unfortunate that their side doesn't really get out, because I think it's interesting, and two, would help the overall perception of who they are and the band in general.
They do seem interesting. I follow both Beta and Fernando on Instagram. Fernando's hilarious, but I guess it's always fascinated me that it's just like a family organization that's running Guns N' Roses. Like, how did he, because Axl's had a interesting family life, and then he kind of gets adopted into this family. So I've always thought that aspect of Team Brazil and Axl Rose very that relationship very interesting.
And that's that's what I think people forget about that. I mean, there is sort of a very strong mother-son dynamic between Beta and Axl, and rightfully so. They've been there for each other for so long that when you attack Axl, Beta, her maternal instincts rear up, and it is what it is. Fernando is a funny guy. Yeah. One thing I'll mention quickly: when I partied with GNR in 2010, at one point I was, Fernando came around. I was like, "Oh, do you happen to have any gum?" I go, "No," and then it's like, "Oh, do you happen to have this?" And I go, "No, I don't have that." And he goes, "Well, who invited this guy?" And I'm thinking, yeah, you probably should seriously ask that, because I'm here through, my friend owned was an owner of the club that they ended up, like, I was supposed to be there, but I really shouldn't have been there. But for some reason we were talking, and we got along well. But at the whole time I was sitting there, I'm like, they're going to kick me out any minute now. Like, but they never did. They were very nice. And but it was kind of funny when he was joking around. He's like, who invited this guy? I'm like, don't seriously ask that question.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Who brought the dick? They're going to find me out.
Yeah, that's right. And that's the thing. I mean, when I was at that after party, you quickly realize that when I walked in there, you think of GNR after parties, you think of, like, cocaine and strippers and people,
maybe not now.
All these crazy, and that may happen, but it wasn't at the one I was at. It was like 40 people. It was family, friends, and band members. And so you check your fandom at the door pretty quickly. You can't walk around in those situations like a fan. Like, you're not asking for autographs. You're not asking for pictures. You're not bugging Axl and asking him a whole bunch of questions. You're there for a good time. You're not there to intrude on that good time. And so, and just, I know probably want to get going here, but my first sort of real interaction with Axl was I ended up finding myself standing beside him for a couple hours, but I didn't really say anything to him because I didn't know what to say to the guy. Like, the guy means so much to me, and his music means a lot to me, but I don't mean anything to him.
But you were standing beside him, like at a party? You're just hanging out, and you're just next to him for a couple hours, like awkwardly, just not saying anything?
Yeah, well, we're all chatting, and Sebastian Bach was there, and I'm joking. I'm talking to, like, a lot of people, but I didn't say to Axel. Yeah, so at one point I'm like, okay, I gotta shake his hand and just say, hey, how's it going? And so I turned, and I said, hey, actually, I'm a big fan. This is my 13th show or something like that. And he kind of like, oh, great. And it was like, the way I remember it, I felt like, even though I'm maybe an inch taller than him, my memory felt like I was like 12 years old, and I was looking up at him, and it was kind of this funny sort of, I felt like I was a kid again. And that was really my only sort of real interaction, other than just listen and tell his stories and talk and have a good time. It was definitely, and my friends like to call it my almost famous story from the movie.
I like it, man. That's something you're going to remember for the rest of your life. You're going to tell your little baby about it, hanging out with Axl Rose, and it's going to, those are moments that this band, provides. Not everyone is as privy as you are, even though you were afraid. You're hanging out in the corner with a lampshade on your head, and so nobody sees you.
Yeah, and so I've been very fortunate. GNR music means the world to me. I've been very fortunate to see the band as many times as I did, and when I had the opportunity to buy the Forum and to keep it going, I just felt like I had an obligation to the other fans and to the band. I know the band in some ways kind of views the Forum as an impediment, but I've always viewed it as, guys like Jarmo and some of the earlier owners and administrators of the Forum were really on the forefront of keeping that excitement going. Without those guys there, I don't know if the support for the band, at least during the initial stages, would have been as strong and as intense as it was. I think a lot of people would have stopped caring, without that kind of fan engagement and social interaction. So I felt like I kind of had a responsibility to help keep that going, because for a lot of people, this is their way of being sort of that geeky, nerdy fan. And it's been nice to be able to keep it going for people and for myself.
Well, I know I speak, of course, for the entire Guns N' Roses online community, where I say thank you. I appreciate it, man. It is a lot of work.
It's not me doing most of it, to be honest with you. Guys,
how many people on your staff? How many people are?
So we've got Russ and A Strange Reality, who are the two other administrators. We have Power Age 5, who is our resident Iron Maiden fan. You think we're nuts about Guns N' Roses? This guy's, I think he's gone to 120 Iron Maiden shows. Wow. And he just started like 10 years ago or something like that. It's crazy. We have Black Sabbath, Tyler. He'd be an interesting guy to have on. He's been interviewed a bunch of times. He's got some funny stories to tell. And then we have Guns Guy, who I saw the second Toronto show with in just a couple weeks ago. He lives in Hamilton. He's been part of the GNR community for a long time. A really great guy. And then we have our two resident British, I don't know if it's the right way to say British birds or British gals, that they've been really supportive. Everyone, like I said, it's always team decisions. We always operate as a team, and I usually let them run with it. I handle most of the business operations and sort of like the logistics side. And those guys just generally are the ones that keep things going, and they do a great job. And Lord knows where the Forum would be, even if it exists, if it wasn't for them. So I just want to thank them, because they've been really instrumental in keeping everything going. So, and they don't get paid. Everyone's volunteer, and I do what I can to help them out with GNR tickets. And if I am ever asking data for favors, it's just like, hey, if you guys are, if there's a chance that, Russ could meet Axl, that'd be great. But, you always, it's one of those things that you don't expect anything. They run such a huge operation, and we were just happy to help out. So, it's really nice to have a group of committed people help run the Forum. Oh, and then also High Voltage. not an official member of the staff anymore, but he's been instrumental in keeping the lights on, so to speak, with all the IT stuff, because I'm not a tech geek, and there's a lot to the programming and web stuff that needs to be updated that he helps out a lot with. So I just wanted to thank them and thank you for having this podcast and having me on. It's been a lot of fun.
No, it's been fun. I mean, thank you for coming on, and I appreciate. You guys have always supported since the beginning, Appetite for Distortion. So I really appreciate all your support. And I guess I should reveal my alias since we're going to all aliases. I know I'm Gambit83 on MyGNRForum.
That's right. Well, we hope to see you posting more. Like I said, the waters are a little less choppy these days. I remember, I think in your last podcast with Russ, you mentioned something about how you got your ticket signed by Bumblefoot and posted it, and everyone came on and attacked you. And it's not like that anymore. Like I said, we want to encourage. We're fine for if people want to criticize performances in Axl, and that's fine. Just we don't need to get personal. We don't need to get ugly, and so we've done our best to try to direct the forum in that direction.
We should just get Guns N' Roses to do a cover of Kumbaya, since they cover everything else, and then
you need a little drama, right? I mean, Guns N' Roses is not, they live on the edge, and so obviously we can't have everything polished and clean, but we wouldn't want that. But certainly we want a place for fans just to feel at home and being able to express their opinions without being treated disrespectfully. So hopefully anyone who's listening to this that had issues before, hopefully they come back and give us another look.
Hey, I'm on it daily, man. So you still got me as an avid MyGNRForum.com patron, or whatever you want to call it. So thank you again, Downzy, for coming on. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that your wife did not go into labor while we were recording, so we were able to spend a little more time together than initially planned. And I hope to have you back, man, if you would.
Maybe in a few months. One day, like I've told a bridge version of the night I partied with the band from 7 years ago. There's a much fuller, more interesting version of that story. And someday, if you're still doing the podcast, I'd love to tell it, because people, I don't know, people seem to love hearing it. There's some really funny moments in it, and maybe someday if the band, retires or something like that, I don't have to worry about ruining anyone's reputation or undermining, or I'd love to tell the full version of that story. So. Love to come back. It was a lot of fun, and thanks again for having me on.
Absolutely, because you're now officially you're a bad apple. You're always welcome back. And no, that's what we want to hear. Whether it's now or later, we'll hear the unreleased version of your GNR party story, if you want to call it that. So thank you again. Again, this is Appetite for Distortion, episode 35. My name is Brando. Thanks to RussTCB, which I know it means taking care of business. If you missed first time we had Russ on, that was one of our first few episodes. And Downzy. So thank you again. I'm still a fan of Canada, even though my ex-girlfriend is from there. I have no hard feelings. So as far as the next episode of the AFD Show, when will it be? Well, in the words of Axl Rose concerning Chinese democracy, I don't know if soon is the word, but you'll see it.
You've been listening to the distorted minds of Brando and Scotto, dissecting all things Guns N' Roses on Appetite for Distortion. Follow the guys on Twitter at the AFD Show and on Facebook at facebook.com/the AFD Show.
Thanks to the lame ass security, I'm going home.